In case you missed it, Roland and Boss have just released a few plug-in versions of some of their iconic pedals. They are available as part of the Roland Cloud, which also includes a whole bunch of other effects like their Space Echo, their Juno chorus, and a bunch of emulations of their vintage synthesizers. So you need the cloud to get access to these. And I think it's an interesting value add for existing cloud users, and it might be a bit of a head scratcher for people who just say wanted to have an SD1 plugin made by the company that makes the SD1. We'll dive in and also check out the RE201 Space Echo, the Juno chorus, and the JC120 plugin while we're at it. Then we'll have a little bit of a chat afterwards. But first, let's hear some tones. Let's start out with the JC120 plugin. There's two available views on here, one that looks like the combo amp and one that is more of a focused view on the control panel. I'm going to roll with this one, and like the real amp, you've got two channels with high and low inputs that are switchable, along with a switchable bright cap on each of them. It's got the chorus and vibrato built in, along with a speaker simulator, two different stereo modes, and a built-in ambience control. I'm going to start with my favorite settings on here, where I'm using the high input of channel 2 with the bright on. I've just turned the treble down slightly and the bass up slightly. The amps reverb I've disabled. I've cranked up the built-in ambience. I'm using the speaker simulator blend A, and I've got the chorus on with the speed a little bit lower than noon and the depth a little bit higher than noon. This is a pretty sweet 80s style clean sound, especially on the neck and middle pickup of this Tyler JTG. That's doing the thing very nicely. There's also a bunch of built-in presets. Let's just hear a crunch and a distortion setting on here. The JC120 isn't really renowned for these sounds, but they're definitely usable in here. Not too shabby at all. I'm in love with the clean sound on this, though. That is just 80s perfection with a little bit of that chorus. It's worth noting as well, you've got a bunch of different mic choices or mic blends in the speaker simulator with the ability to change the mic position. You've also got two different stereo modes on here, single or dual. Let's have a listen to what they do with the chorus. Sounds like single is doing the classic CE1 or JC120 style wet, dry chorus on there. So not really a true stereo chorus, whereas dual is giving you a true stereo chorus on there. I'm going to roll with dual. Let's start out with some of these Boss pedal plugins next. So I'm going to drag this in. Very straightforward layout on here. You've got a skeuomorphic design that mimics the original controls of the pedals, along with an input and output gain on here. You select the different pedals up here. At the moment, there's three different drives, the DS1, the OD1, and the mighty SD1. In the modulation section, you've just got the PH1 phaser, and in others, you've got a CS1, the SP1 Spectrum, which is kind of just an EQ, the slow gear, and the touch wah. So let's start out with the CS1 on here. With a classic C1, I'd probably put the treble on there, crank the level and the sustain up on here, and I'll go to the bridge and middle pickup on here of the JTG for a classic spanky 80s clean. If you want to turn them on, you press on, the same way you would a real pedal, the big foot switch down here. That's really cool. That is adding lots of satisfying squish on there, and it's changing the feel significantly. Let's have a listen to the slow gear on here, and we'll hear it on its own, basically at the stock settings. Then I'm going to drag in the RE201 Space Echo plugin at the end of the chain on here just to give it a little bit of extra space. So I'll go to the neck pickup on here. I basically just have to tweak the sensitivity and attack. And the slow gear to me is a prime candidate for a Wazacraft reissue as a real pedal. The used prices on these pedals are pretty ridiculous at the moment. So if anyone at Roland or Boss is watching this and you're planning a Wazacraft slow gear, I think it's going to be a hit because it's such a classic effect. That is super tasty. There's some really fun and creative presets in this RE201 plugin, some dub style stuff, some ambient style stuff, and plenty of sound on sound and like degradation style loops on there. I've set it up for just a bit of echo and reverb, which I will leave on, and we'll go over to the SD1 plugin now. I always like the real SD1 into a clean amp as like a kind of boutique-y style drive, so keeping the level and the tone nice and low and getting a bit of drive out of it. Let's just have a listen to what that sounds like, and then we'll also kick in this Juno 60 chorus on here. Yet another Roland classic that I think would be amazing as a hardware pedal. Imagine a Wazacraft Juno 60 pedal. You could put it on your pedal board with your Dimension C Wazacraft pedal and have all the coolest modulation sounds from the late 70s and early 80s. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's hear some SD1 on there. I will start clean and then kick it in. Let's get some of these into a crunchy amp now. I've brought up the Neural DSP Archetype Nolly X plugin. I'm on the third amp with my custom IR. We'll hear the three different drives, then the phaser and the touch wah. Amazing to have, and I really do hope that Boss and Roland continue to expand this and eventually add all of their classic pedals in there. Furthermore, seeing some of these available as plugins makes me want them available on the flagship Boss modeling products, especially things that maybe aren't in there yet, like the Juno chorus. If you can make a plugin of that, certainly they could port something of that over to, say, the GT1000 or the GX. Similarly, I would love to see Boss actually add the Dimension chorus to their flagship modelers and to their flagship plugin suite on there, because like every other modeling company has a Dimension chorus in their Fractal, Neural DSP, Line 6, all have a Dimension chorus available in their modelers. But if you want the Boss Dimension chorus, you can't get it in something like the GT1000. You need the standalone pedal. And the standalone pedal sounds amazing, but I do feel like not having it in the modelers is a bit of a miss. And why am I talking about hardware modelers when this is a plugin suite? I think the plugin suite, if you're a producer or someone who's really into synthesizers, is pretty awesome. Having a Jupiter plugin and a Juno plugin and all of these classic synth sounds that you could just run off a laptop is pretty amazing. And they do sound fantastic, and they've been a whole bunch of fun to play around with. Being able to then combine them with some classic Boss effects is really, really lovely. But if you're just a guitar player who wants to go and grab these, it's hard to see just the Boss pedals and the JC120 as a good deal on a subscription, in my opinion. I think if you really wanted to get the most out of this, then you'd get it for the synthesizers and the extra effects in there. I think that Juno chorus sounds pretty amazing. The RE201 has some great presets and can get nice and dirty and crunchy as it should. So yeah, it's probably a bit of a head scratcher if you're just approaching this as a guitar player. Like I just said, though, if you're a producer or someone into synths, this Roland Cloud Ultimate, you may already have it. So it's like an extra value add in there. And I think with any subscription service, it's a trade-off between how much new content you get every cycle and how much you end up inevitably paying. I mean, I would probably pay 20 or 30 bucks just to have an SD1 plugin. I may never use it, but the fact that I could just have an SD1 plugin would make me really happy because I love the pedal so much, right? Roland and Boss definitely have cultivated that brand loyalty over the years. I really want to see some extra pedals in there. Like I said, having the Dimension Chorus in there, having some of the weirder pedals that Boss have made over the years, like say the XT2 Extortion or the Enhancer or the DC3 or the CE3, all these kind of things, I think could be an interesting opportunity for them to make those sounds available to a lot of people. And because Boss pedals, when it comes to vintage pedals as well, are still relatively affordable, being able to hear the plug-in version of something before you drop, I don't know, 400, 500 bucks on a vintage unit on eBay would be a great utility. You know, if you were somebody looking to expand your Boss pedal collection or something like that, then yeah, drop a monthly subscription on something like that for 1 month, get to hear a bunch of sounds. At the moment, it's just got a quite limited sound set, in my opinion, though. Nevertheless, I'd like to hear from all of you. Are you using the Roland Cloud for all the synthesizer stuff and the extra effects in there? Did you like the sounds in this video? How would you use this if you went and got it? And what Boss pedals would you like to see recreated in the plugin format? This is just launched. Well, the Boss pedals part of it anyway, the Cloud Ultimate has been out for a while, but they've just come out. So I really do hope they expand that. I mean, they've been expanding the Cloud quite a lot over the years, and I really do hope to see a bunch of those sounds either added to the flagship modelers or added for future hardware that they do. If you like this style of video, you can support me directly by checking out some of the music that I make with my band Ragdoll, supporting me on Patreon, or just hitting the like and subscribe button and telling one of your mates about it. Until next time, I'll play you out with some weird space echo noises. Cheers.